All right, let's talk about something that causes a ton of confusion in the apple world. Plant growth regulators, or PGRs, right? On one hand, you hear they're the secret to getting that perfect apple, but then you also hear all these warnings about the risks. So what's the real story? Well, let's dig in and find out.
And really, this is the big question, isn't it? Are these PGRs a farmer's best friend, or are they a foe? You get so much conflicting advice from all sides, it's no wonder you can feel completely stuck, just not sure what's actually best for your own orchard.
So here's our game plan to cut through the noise. We're going to start with the dilemma itself, then decode the chemicals. After that, we'll get into a practical 3-step plan, weigh the real risks and rewards, and wrap up by busting some common myths.
Okay, so it really all boils down to these mixed messages you get out in the orchard. You're dealing with fruit shedding, or maybe some skin russeting, or you just want bigger apples. And what's the advice? Oh, just spray a PGR. But, as any farmer knows, it is never that simple.
And that vague advice just leads to a ton of really important questions, like which specific PGR am I supposed to use? What's the correct dose? When is the absolute best time to spray? And maybe most importantly, what are the real effects going to be on my trees and my fruit? These are the questions we are going to answer right now.
That brings us right to our next section, decoding the chemicals. Look, to use these things right, you have to know what's in the bottle. And the number one thing to get is this: not all PGRs are created equal, not even close. So, what is a PGR anyway? Well, think about it like this. Plants have their own natural hormones, right? Things like gibrellins that basically tell them how to grow. A PGR is just a lab-synthesized version of those exact same hormones. We're basically giving the plant a targeted external instruction to get it to do something specific.
Okay, this right here, this is probably the single biggest mistake people make. A lot of folks will just grab GA3. It's a general growth regulator, and hey, it works great on grapes or citrus. But on an apple tree, it causes all this uncontrolled, lanky growth. It's the wrong tool. The right tool is a very specific formula. A mix of gibrellic acids 4 and 7, plus something called BA, which is a cytokinin that helps with cell division. This combo, you might see it sold as promolin, is literally designed for the controlled growth that apples need. So, knowing the right chemical, that's half the battle won right there. Now, let's get practical. Let's talk about the how. This next part is all about a simple 3-step plan that's backed by research from the US and Europe, and it's all about applying the right stuff to get the results you're actually after.
You know this already. In farming, timing is everything, and the research is super clear here. There are 3 critical windows for spraying. First up, peak flowering, when you've got about 70 to 80% bloom. Second, petal fall, just a few days after. And third, what we call the walnut stage. Hitting these 3 moments is absolutely crucial, because the tree is doing something totally different at each stage, and every spray has a very specific job. And here's the plan laid out perfectly. First thing to notice, the dose stays the same, 40 milliliters per 100 liters of water. Simple. But the goal for each spray is different. That first spray, at flowering, that's to stimulate the ovary and prevent russeting. You know, that rough, brownish skin. It makes the skin more elastic. Then, the second spray at petal fall. That's all about triggering cell division. This is what determines the potential size of the apple. Finally, that third spray at the walnut stage, that's for controlled elongation. This is what gives you that beautiful conical shape and those nice prominent lobes at the bottom of the apple.
Okay, so that's the plan for getting it right. But it's really important to be balanced here. Any powerful tool has risks if you don't use it correctly. So now let's take an honest look at both sides of the coin, the rewards and the risks. So when you nail it, the right chemical, the right timing, the right dose, these are the rewards. You get that classic conical shape, those nice prominent lobes, you get much better control over russeting, and the big one, you see an increase in fruit size and weight. I mean, these are the exact things every apple farmer is shooting for. But what happens if you get it wrong? Well, that's the flip side, especially if you overuse it or, again, use the wrong product. You might see the leaves start to turn yellow. That's a condition called chlorosis. The leaves can also get narrow and just not develop right. And, like we said before, using that generic GA3 causes that weak, spindly stem growth. The main takeaway here is that overdosing any PGR puts the whole tree under a lot of stress.
But what about the big one? What about human health? It's obviously a huge concern, and the research from both the US and the EU on this is really clear. When you use the correct apple-specific formula, that GA4 plus 7 plus BA mix, and you use it the right way, it has shown zero specific harmful effects on humans.
And listen, this is a really important distinction to make, because those health concerns you might have read about, the studies showing issues in animals, those are specifically linked to high levels of GA3. That's the general purpose one, not the one made for apples. It just goes to show again how critical it is to use the right formula for the right crop.
All right, last section. Let's tackle some of the biggest myths out there head on. There's a lot of misinformation that gets passed around, so it's time to separate the facts from the fiction.
Okay, myth number 1. This is a big one. The idea that PGRs leave some kind of permanent harmful chemical residue on the fruit that's still there when you pick it and when you eat it.
Here's the truth. The apple-specific formula, that GA4 plus 7 mix, is completely biodegradable. It breaks down naturally, on its own, within about 12 to 14 days. It leaves absolutely no residue behind.
Myth number 2. This is such a classic temptation, right? The thinking goes, hey, if a little bit is good, then more must be better.
No, absolutely not. As we just saw when we talked about the risks, the exact opposite is true. Overdosing doesn't make things better, it just causes all those negative side effects. It stresses the tree out, and you can actually end up hurting your crop. With this stuff, precision is everything.
And a last myth, myth number 3. This one's a bit more philosophical. It's the idea that PGRs are basically poison, that they're unnatural, and that we should just stick to traditional methods only. But the truth is, modern smart farming isn't about choosing science or tradition. It's about combining the best of both. Think of PGRs as just one tool in a very big toolbox. The key is using them smartly and only when and where they're really needed. And really, that's what this all comes down to. The most important thing isn't just if you use a tool, but knowing which tool to grab for the job and knowing how to use it the right way. So, there you have it. We started with a lot of confusion, but hopefully now you have some clarity. We've decoded the chemicals, we've walked through a specific 3-step plan, and we've busted the biggest myths. So the final question, that's for you. Now that you've got the facts, how is this information going to change what you do in your orchard?